Let's start with something nobody around you is going to tell you. Every time you open your mouth to complain, you lose not just the argument, not just the moment. You lose something far more valuable than either of those. You lose your power, your energy, your identity, and you lose it quietly, slowly, in a way that feels so natural you don't even notice it happening. Think about it clearly. The moment you start explaining yourself to someone who didn't ask for an explanation, you have already handed them authority over you. You have already decided, somewhere beneath your conscious awareness, that their opinion of your decision matters more than your own judgment about it. And that is the beginning of weakness. Not the loud, dramatic kind of weakness, but the quiet, slow, corrosive kind that eats you from the inside while the world moves on without you. Thomas Shelby never explained, not to the police, not to rivals, not to the people he loved most. He made a decision, and he stood inside it like a man standing in a storm with no coat. Not because he didn't feel the cold, but because showing it would cost him everything he had spent years building. He understood something that most men never figure out, no matter how long they live. The moment you explain, you invite judgment, and the moment you invite judgment, you surrender control of the narrative. And control of the narrative is everything. Now ask yourself honestly, how many times this week did you explain yourself to someone who didn't deserve the explanation? How many times did you justify a choice to a person whose own life is smaller than your ambition? How many times did you apologize for making a decision that was entirely, completely, legitimately yours to make? Count them. They cost you. Every explanation is a debt you don't owe. Every complaint is a broadcast to the world that your circumstances are bigger than your capacity to handle them. And in the game of life, whether you're playing it in the boardrooms of London, the startup offices of New York, or the streets of wherever you're building from, the person who appears most in control always wins. Not always the smartest, not always the most talented, the most controlled. This is not about being cold to people. This is not about being emotionally unavailable or performatively stoic. This is about understanding that your energy is a currency, finite, precious, irreplaceable, and every time you spend it complaining, you are pouring it into something that returns absolutely nothing. You are watering concrete and wondering why nothing grows. The people who actually move mountains in this world, the ones who build empires from nothing, who reshape industries, who create legacies that outlive them, they are not the ones crying at the dinner table about how unfair the situation is. They are the ones who looked at unfair and said, "Fine, I'll work with this." And then they got to work, quietly, consistently, without an audience, without applause, without explanation. You have to make a decision today. Right now, in this moment, are you going to be someone who narrates their suffering, or someone who transcends it? Because the world will not let you do both. You do not get that option. Let me tell you something about silence. Real silence. Not the uncomfortable kind that you rush to fill. Not the avoidant kind that signals you have nothing to say. The deliberate, weaponized, Thomas Shelby kind of silence. The kind that makes other people feel like they are standing on a floor that might give way at any moment. When Thomas Shelby walked into a room, he didn't rush to fill the air with noise. He let the silence sit. He let it breathe. He let it press against every other person in that room until the discomfort became palpable. And then, and only then, he spoke. And when he spoke, every single person listened, not because he was the loudest voice, not because he was the most aggressive presence, but because every word he produced had weight behind it. It had cost something to produce. It had passed through a filter of precision and intention that most people's words never touch. Most people are terrified of silence. They fill every pause with unnecessary noise. They talk when they have absolutely nothing to say. They share opinions that haven't been fully formed. They announce plans before the plans have produced a single result. And by doing this constantly, they dilute themselves. They make themselves entirely predictable. They become easy to read and therefore easy to dismiss. Here is the truth that nobody is teaching. Your silence makes you dangerous. When you stop explaining yourself, people have to work to understand you. And when they have to work to understand you, they start paying serious attention. When people are paying serious attention, you have leverage. That is not manipulation. That is mastery. That is the difference between being reacted to and being responded to. How many times have you rushed to defend yourself in a conversation and immediately regretted it? How many times have you over-explained a decision and watched it slowly collapse under the weight of the criticism your explanation invited? How many times have you announced a goal, a plan, a dream before you had any result to show for it and watched people pick it apart until your own confidence in it started to erode? The incomplete sentence is powerful. The conversation that ends before the other person is fully satisfied is powerful. The decision that you make, execute, and don't discuss, that is power. Not every move needs an announcement. Not every victory needs witnesses. Not every plan needs to be ratified by a committee of people who are not doing what you're doing. Start practicing this immediately. The next time someone challenges a decision you've made, don't defend it. Simply say, "That's what I've decided," and stop talking completely. Watch what happens to the dynamic in that room. Watch how the weight shifts. Watch how respect, real respect, not performance, walks into the space that your explanation was occupying. Silence is not emptiness. It is not passivity. It is not weakness dressed up in restraint. Silence is discipline made visible. And discipline, applied with consistency and intention over time, becomes the structural foundation of every real achievement you will ever build. Here is a hard truth, and I need you to sit with it rather than react to it immediately. Complaining is comfortable. That is the reason people do it at the scale they do. It feels like something is happening. It feels like you are acknowledging reality honestly, like you're processing your circumstances in a healthy way, like you're being real about where you are. But all complaining actually does, every single time, is cement the story that you are a victim of your life rather than the author of it. Look at the people around you who complain most consistently. Are they the most successful people in your circle? Are they the happiest? Are they the ones making real forward progress, building real things, producing real results? They are not. They are the ones standing absolutely still while providing a very articulate, very detailed narration of every reason why they cannot move. And the tragedy, the part that should genuinely disturb you, is that they have convinced themselves the narration is the same as the action. It is not. It has never been. Complaining is a poverty mindset. Not just financial poverty, mental poverty, emotional poverty. The poverty of someone who has decided that the world owes them a different set of circumstances than the ones they were given, and who spends their energy demanding that debt be repaid rather than building something new from what they have. Thomas Shelby came from nothing that the comfortable world would recognize as a starting point. He came from Garrison Lane, from a family that polite society had written off as irrelevant, from a community that the government had forgotten existed. He had more legitimate grievances than you have sentences to hold them. Every justified complaint you can name. He could name 3 more and they would be larger. And he chose none of them. He chose action over articulation every single time the choice presented itself. He chose strategy over suffering. He built an empire not because the world cleared a path for him, but because he refused, absolutely refused, to accept the version of his life that the world had pre-decided. That refusal is available to you right now, in whatever circumstance you are currently sitting in. The question is never whether your circumstances are difficult. They probably are. The only question that matters, is whether your circumstances are directing you, or whether you are directing them. And every complaint you make is live evidence that your circumstances are still winning. Stop funding your own limitation with your own voice. The language you use every day to describe your life is not neutral reporting, it is active construction. You are building your reality with your words, in real time, continuously. If you call yourself unlucky, you find evidence of bad luck in everything. If you call yourself stuck, every door looks locked. But if you get quiet, if you stop narrating the problem and start engineering the answer, the entire internal landscape changes. Something fundamental shifts in the way you see what is available to you. Stop spending time on what you don't have. Get completely, obsessively focused on building what you want. These are not the same activity. They do not produce the same results. And you do not have the time, the energy, or the years to spend on both. This section is specifically for you if you are actually building something. If you have a vision that goes genuinely beyond the ordinary, If you're working towards something that the people directly around you cannot yet see, cannot yet measure, cannot yet believe in, because they don't have to live inside it the way you do, stop explaining it to them. I understand the impulse completely. You want the people you love, the people you respect, the people who have known you longest, to see what you see. You want them to believe what you believe. You want them to understand why this matters so much, why you are making the sacrifices you are making, why the path you are on looks so different from the path they expected you to walk. That is a deeply human impulse, and there is nothing wrong with feeling it. But here's what that impulse costs you when you act on it: time, momentum, and energy. The three resources you cannot afford to bleed. Because explaining your vision to people who are not equipped to receive it does not grow the vision. It exposes it to conditions it is not yet strong enough to survive. Early stage visions are fragile. They need protected environments. They need silence and space, and the kind of privacy that allows them to develop strength before they face challenge. Thomas Shelby did not convene strategy sessions with skeptics. He did not hold open consultations on his plans. He did not seek consensus from the people who doubted him. He moved, he executed, in the direction of his vision. And when the result materialized, when the empire was real and visible and undeniable, understanding arrived for everyone else naturally, not before, after. Results are the only explanation that ever carries full weight. Everything prior to results is just noise wearing the costume of conversation. You do not owe anyone an advance preview of your life. Your goals are not subject to a public vote. Your ambition does not require approval before it is allowed to exist. The vision you carry, the one that surfaces at 3 in the morning when you should be sleeping, the one that refuses to leave you alone no matter how many times you try to be sensible and practical about it. That vision is yours alone. Protect it like it is worth protecting, because if you expose it too early, to the wrong audience, in the wrong conditions, they will not simply fail to understand it. They will work, sincerely, without malice, to talk you out of it, because your ambition makes their acceptance of limitation feel like a choice rather than an inevitability. And that is uncomfortable for people. Don't let someone else's ceiling become your floor. Build in the dark, move in silence. Let your work reach completion before you allow it an audience. And when the day comes that what you built speaks for itself, let it speak loudly. Let it be the only explanation you are ever obligated to provide. Now we address the emotional dimension of this, because this is precisely where most people collapse. You can understand everything in this script at an intellectual level. You can feel the truth of it, take notes on it, share it with others. But the moment someone disrespects you in a meeting, undermines your work publicly, betrays your trust directly, or simply says the wrong thing at the wrong moment, all of that intellectual understanding dissolves completely. And you react immediately, reflexively, expensively. Thomas Shelby was not emotionless. That is a critical misreading of the man and a genuinely dangerous misunderstanding of the principle he represents. He felt everything: the loss of grace, the weight of what the war had taken from him, the cost of every decision his ambition demanded. He carried all of it, constantly, but he never, not once, allowed those emotions to make his decisions for him. He allowed them to exist, fully, without suppression, and then he stepped deliberately past them into strategy. That is the entire discipline, not the absence of feeling, the mastery of timing. Emotional outbursts are expensive in ways people don't fully calculate until after they've paid. Every time you allow emotion to drive your public response in a high-stakes situation, you hand your opponent an exact map of where to strike you next time. You reveal your triggers with precision. You advertise your pain points. You make yourself entirely readable. And a readable person is an exploitable person, full stop. This is not about suppression. Chronic suppression breaks people. It builds pressure that has no safe outlet, and eventually, it finds an unsafe one. This is about containment and redirection. When you feel the surge of frustration rising, the heat of anger building, the cold weight of genuine hurt landing, acknowledge it completely and honestly inside yourself. Don't pretend it isn't there. Contain it deliberately, and then redirect every ounce of that energy directly into your next calculated, intentional move. Your anger is fuel. Burn it in the engine, not in the room. The people who accomplish things that are worth remembering are rarely the fastest reactors. They are the most deliberate responders. They are the ones who have trained themselves over time and through real difficulty, to insert a pause between provocation and response, to create a small protected space of decision in a gap that most people fill entirely with reflex. That pause, small as it is where your power actually lives. Build that pause, guard it fiercely. When someone attacks you publicly, don't defend publicly. When someone questions your capability, don't justify it. When someone attempts to bait you into an argument that serves their agenda and costs you yours, don't take the bait. Smile if appropriate, or simply continue moving, because the scoreboard matters infinitely more than the argument, and the scoreboard is built in silence, over time through consistent output, never through debate. Here is where the philosophy requires nuance, and the nuance is non-negotiable. Not complaining and not explaining does not mean you avoid accountability. It does not mean you look away when you are wrong, or deflect when your decisions produce bad outcomes. Thomas Shelby took full, unambiguous responsibility for everything that happened under his authority. When things went wrong, and they went spectacularly, dramatically, painfully wrong on a regular basis, he did not scan the room for someone to carry the blame. He assessed the damage with clarity, made the necessary adjustment, and moved forward. That distinction is everything. Accountability without apology as performance. Responsibility without a public confession, engineered for sympathy. The culture surrounding us has manufactured a generation of professional apologizers. People who apologize reflexively, publicly, repeatedly, and without any accompanying shift in actual behavior. The apology has become a substitute for the change, and it doesn't work. It doesn't repair what broke. It doesn't restore what was lost. It creates a temporary social comfort that dissolves within days, while the same underlying pattern repeats without interruption. Real accountability looks entirely different. It looks like recognizing what went wrong with complete honesty, not the version that is comfortable, but the actual version, making the internal decision to correct it without requiring an audience for that decision, and then correcting it visibly through changed behavior over time. No performance, no crowd, no expectation of recognition for admitting the mistake. You made a bad call. Acknowledge it to yourself fully. Understand why it happened. Fix what it broke. Move forward with the correction embedded. That is the complete cycle. That is the only cycle that produces real growth rather than the appearance of growth. The moment accountability becomes a performance. The moment your public apology is more about how you are perceived than about what you are changing, you have corrupted the tool. You have converted a genuine mechanism of growth into a reputation management exercise, and that corruption is visible to every person watching closely enough. Own your errors privately, correct them publicly through sustained action. That sequence earns the kind of respect that no apology has ever been able to purchase. The deepest level of this entire conversation is identity. Everything else we have discussed, the silence, the controlled emotion, the refusal to explain, the strategic accountability, all of it flows from this single source. Who you actually are, at your foundation, when the pressure is real and the audience is gone, when you have a clear, unshakable, self-constructed sense of who you are and what you are genuinely about, you stop needing to explain yourself. Not because you decide strategically to stop, but because the explanation becomes genuinely unnecessary. Your identity does the work your words no longer have to. People understand what you stand for by watching how you stand, by observing what you do under pressure, by watching whether your actions across months and years remain consistent with the person you have claimed to be. Thomas Shelby's identity was never announced. It was demonstrated continuously through choices made under conditions most people never face. Everyone who encountered the Peaky Blinders understood exactly who they were dealing with, not because Thomas Shelby held a press conference, but because his track record, his absolute consistency, his unyielding commitment to his own code made the explanation redundant before it was ever requested. Build that kind of identity, not by describing what kind of person you are in conversation, but by being that person relentlessly in every room, under every variety of pressure, across every circumstance that life presents, until your identity is so consistent, so demonstrably real, so self-evident in your behavior that no one asks for clarification anymore. They already know, because your actions have already told them repeatedly over a long enough timeline. When people know who you are from watching what you do, when your reputation precedes you honestly, built on real evidence. You never again find yourself in a conversation where you're justifying your existence or explaining your choices. You become someone who is evaluated on their body of work, not on a single decision, not on a difficult moment, on the entire accumulated record of how you move through life. And that is a form of freedom most people never experience. Fragile identities require constant maintenance. They collapse under challenge. They need continuous external validation to survive. They demand that every misunderstanding be corrected in real time, that every criticism be addressed, that every question about character be answered immediately and publicly. That is an exhausting, unsustainable, full-time occupation that produces nothing and pays nothing. Build an identity that is structural, load-bearing, one that can absorb challenge, withstand misunderstanding, survive deliberate attack, and not require you to abandon your position in order to defend it. Build a kind of character that, when questioned, simply points at the evidence and continues working without breaking stride. That is the final form of this principle, not a strategy you deploy, not a technique you apply. An identity you inhabit, a complete, coherent way of being in the world that makes the explanation structurally unnecessary. Enough theory. Let's talk about what this looks like in the actual conditions of your actual life, right now. Starting at the beginning of next week, when your boss undermines your idea in front of the entire team, you don't retaliate. You don't sulk visibly. You don't stay late constructing the perfect email, explaining why the idea was valid. You note it internally. You continue working. You execute the idea quietly, from a different angle, until the result is so undeniable that the undermining becomes irrelevant history that no one remembers. When your business is struggling, people in your network are asking uncomfortable questions. You don't overshare. You don't perform your anxiety publicly. You don't flood your contacts with updates that communicate desperation underneath the polished language. You go back to the fundamentals. You identify the actual problem. You work it with everything you have. You emerge with a result that answers every question ever raised, without you having to answer a single one directly. When your personal choices become a subject of public opinion among people who are not living your life, you don't convene a defense. You don't explain the context. You don't argue for the legitimacy of your decision with people who did not ask to be consulted before you made it. You make the decision that is right for your life. You live inside it fully, without performance, without apology. When the economy shifts, the market moves against you, the algorithm changes, the industry disrupts, the external environment does something you did not plan for, you don't post a complaint. You don't write the thread about how unfair the conditions are. You adapt. You rebuild. You find the new angle and you pursue it with the same intensity you brought to the old one, because the market does not read your grievances. The economy is not moved by your frustration. The algorithm has no access to your pain. The only language any of it responds to is demonstrated, consistent, intelligent action. This is not easy. I will not pretend otherwise, because that would be a disservice to you. This is genuinely one of the hardest disciplines a person can build, because it runs directly against instincts that are real and human and deep. The instinct to be understood, to be validated, to have your difficulty witnessed, to have your choices affirmed by people whose opinion you value. Those instincts exist for reasons. They are not weaknesses to be ashamed of, but they are not always useful. And the ability to distinguish between what is human and what is useful, and to choose, in the difficult moments, the useful thing over the comfortable one, that is the practice. That is the real work. That is the gap between people who talk about transforming their lives and people who actually do it. Thomas Shelby did not have a comfortable starting point. He did not have a world that wanted him to succeed. He did not have systems built in his favor or institutions rooting for his elevation. He had a plan, a discipline, an iron refusal to accept the story the world had already written for him, and the absolute commitment to write a different one himself. That option is available to you, completely, without condition, not because your circumstances are the same as his, but because the principle transfers regardless of circumstance. You do not need the perfect conditions. You do not need permission from the people around you. You do not need to be understood before you begin. You need a decision. Clear, unambiguous, non-negotiable. And then you need the discipline to honor that decision in every room, every conversation, every moment, especially the moments when honoring it costs you something real. Especially those moments. Those are the ones that actually build you. So here is where we end. Not with inspiration, with instruction. Stop explaining, stop complaining. Not because your pain isn't real, not because your challenges aren't legitimate and difficult and heavy, but because you are worth more than the narrative of your struggle. You are worth the evidence of your victory. Thomas Shelby didn't talk about becoming powerful. He became powerful and let the results do all the talking permanently. That is the standard. That is the posture. Adopt it now, not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve. Now, in the mess, in the uncertainty, in the silence. Build, execute, win. Let your work explain everything.